In this lesson, we focus on a practical demonstration of round trip between DaVinci Resolve and Apple Final Cut Pro X, written as the letter X. As noted in the previous lessons, we'll be working with edited content, that is, with a timeline completed in our nonlinear editor. So we are in Apple Final Cut Pro, where we have finalized editing our sample project. Our project resolution is set to HD 1080, and we're using 25 frames per second. We made two image adjustments when editing, so we'll see how these changes are transferred into DaVinci Resolve. We have flipped this shot horizontally using the flipping effect, and in this one we used 115% zoom, making the image slightly larger. Moving on to the first step of round trip, we continue by exporting the edit list. In Apple Final Cut Pro X, we choose the FCP XML list, created especially for this Final Cut Pro version. Select File and Export XML from the main menu. Let's create a new folder for our export and call it XML. The edit list will be stored here. As was mentioned earlier, we can check the transfer using a reference video. So let's also export the video preview from our nonlinear editor. Lower resolution and quality are fine. Now select File from the main menu and continue to share. I'll choose, for example, the 720p resolution preset and adjust the output format to QuickTime Movie. Any format will work here, as long as DaVinci recognizes it. The reference video can be stored anywhere, but I will place it into the edit list folder. This completes our work in Apple Final Cut Pro, and we're ready to move on to DaVinci Resolve. In DaVinci Resolve, we open the Edit panel. Call up the menu in the timeline window with a right-click and select the XML edit list import. As we can see, DaVinci also supports FCP XML format. Let's check the preset parameters. Since a timeline of identical parameters, that is in HD 1080, with 25 frames per second is preset in our DaVinci Resolve settings, we can leave the automatic timeline setting unchecked. Though, let's check the automatic import of video files into the media pool, which saves time we'd otherwise spend doing the import manually. We also want the image sizing information to be transferred into the timeline. We can leave the color information unchecked, since we're actually planning to grade in DaVinci Resolve. Click OK. The program asks us to select the folder that contains our source videos. So let's open the folder with our source files. Let's make sure that all has been transferred properly from Apple Final Cut Pro. We'll use our reference video as before, which we first import in the media pool. It's crucial though to import the reference video correctly, since reference clips are not imported the same way as our source material. When importing, the clip must first be checked in the menu as offline reference. In the bottom corner, a small label is then attached to the reference video, marking all reference videos in our media pool. After returning to the timeline, we call up the menu with a right-click and link our reference clip to the timeline. As we can see, the DaVinci timeline, which we had obtained from the XML sequence list, can be viewed in the right window. Switching the button, our reference video is displayed in the left window. Comparing the left and the right windows, we can evaluate differences between the Apple Final Cut Pro and the DaVinci timelines. The first two clips have been transferred correctly. The flipping effect has not transferred properly in the third. Next sections look fine. And the 115% zoom has also been transferred correctly. So let's fix the issue we've found. A shot can be flipped horizontally in one of two ways. Either in the media pool, where we locate the shot and select horizontal flip from the attributes. Now let's undo this step. And the second option is our color panel. The horizontal and vertical image flip button is located in the sizing window. And our timeline has been corrected. A note regarding the reference video: it may happen that despite doing everything correctly, you will not see any images in the reference window. In such cases, the most frequent reason is an incorrect reference video timecode. If that happens, it can be adjusted under Clip Attributes in the Media pool. We are now ready to begin with color corrections, in other words, with grading using the color panel. I will skip this part here and move ahead to the point when our grading is completed and we're ready to transfer our work back into Apple Final Cut Pro. Let's go to the Delivery panel. Basic settings will suffice here. We look for the appropriate Final Cut Pro preset. This preset is intended for the previous Final Cut Pro 7 version with an XML list. We go ahead and select it. Separately, we will also need to generate a list for the newer Final Cut Pro 10 version, which uses the newer FCP XML format. The resolution and compression settings are not required to match the source files. Here we can set new parameters if we're planning to continue using a different resolution or quality. In our case, I'll leave the settings identical to our source material. So what does this round-trip preset do? It exports the graded files as well as the XML edit list into the selected folder. Next, we render the export, and after it is complete, we check that the files have been properly stored. The graded video files and the new XML list should be located in the selected folder. As I mentioned a while ago, the FCP XML list is required for Final Cut Pro. So let's go to the Edit panel and select List Export from the main menu. Choose the FCP XML format and save it, for instance in the same folder that contains our graded files. This completes our work in DaVinci Resolve, and we can switch back to our nonlinear editor, Apple Final Cut Pro 10. Here we select Import from the main menu and choose XML. Now we locate the FCP XML list we had exported from DaVinci Resolve. After confirmation, a timeline containing our graded files is loaded into Apple Final Cut Pro. This concludes round trip between Apple Final Cut Pro 10 and DaVinci Resolve.